Welcome to Papyrus Plans. I'm Tasha. Ready to create something beautiful? Let's dive in.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Papyrus Plans tribe. This is going to be basically my foiling masterclass. So buckle up, get your favorite drink, your snack, and let's talk about foil and all of the various different techniques. So I created this video at the request of one of my subscribers, and let me make sure I get her name right. Vicky Foster 7725. She's the reason why I created this video. And she basically wanted to know how I do all of my different foil techniques so that she can make her own stickers. And so we're going to talk about lots of different things, but at the end of this video, you are going to know when to use each foiling method because there is more than one. You're going to know how to troubleshoot transfer issues that you might experience during the foiling process. And you're also going to learn how to plan and execute a high detail foiled composition, as well as adapt techniques depending on what your end goal is. So again, those are kind of the overarching topics that I hope that we'll cover. So let's get started. So let's talk about different foiling methods. First and foremost, how can you foil? So you cannot foil with an inkjet printer. It requires a laser printer, okay? If you want to foil with your printer, it must be laser. So that's the first thing. There are also other ways to foil, for example, with glue. So you can foil with just a basic Elmer's glue stick, okay? So I've used this. You also can foil with a toner pen. Other brands will have things like toner ink. This is a foil pen, which I think is similar to basically glue. Is just a special type of glue that allows the foil to adhere more or less. They call it a toner pen, but there really isn't any toner. Now, there are some toner pens that do contain toner. For example, by like Mink, they also sell toner ink in like little dropper bottles that kind of look like this. This is alcohol ink, but just kind of show you what I'm talking about. It comes in like a little bottle like this. And I'll link to the various different types of products that you can use in the description box. So just kind of give you a general understanding of the different types of things you can use, okay? All right, so one of my preferred methods is laser printing foiling. I love using a laser printer to create foiling because it allows you to have a great deal of precision. And I think it's great for things like typography, repeating patterns, borders, geometric elements. Again, I think one of its greatest strengths is the fact that it is very precise. You have a lot of scalability and consistency, but there are limitations. It's hard to do things like organic line variation, and you also are dependent on your printer and all of that entails. For example, your rollers, and there can be alignment issues. Depending on the kind of materials that you're using, that can cause additional frustrations. So there are pros and cons to every single method. I will say with laser printing, you get greater precision, but you do sacrifice a little bit on the other end in terms of certain designs that you can and cannot do, and kind of things that I mentioned before. The other type of foiling is with toner pen foiling, and I started using a toner pen last year, and that's what I used to create the dashboards in my custom planner covers. In fact, let me see if I can grab some of those real quick so I can show you a visual example. Okay, I'm going to grab a big stack here, and just to show you, let's see, I think this is a good example. So I'll grab this one. All right, so these are custom dashboards that I created for my planner, and I created a bunch of them en masse so that I could have the opportunity to kind of pick my own dividers year from year and have a different design for at least 4 or 5 years in a row if I decided that I didn't like any of the dashboards that came with my Happy Planner. So that's one of the reasons why I decided to create a custom cover and custom dashboards this year for my 2026 planner. So these are the dashboards. And as you can see, I also added some additional elements that are non-foil, like 3-dimensional stickles and pops of color. So that's on the front, but on the back, as you can see, this is very heavily foiled. Okay. Now, the technique I used for this was a combination of my glue stick, especially for these large designs, and for more intricate designs, see if I can show an example. Actually, it might be in my current planner. Yeah, I think I used a glue stick with this one. For more intricate designs in my current planner, I used this toner pen. So let me get that real quick so you can kind of see a comparison of the distinction between the two. Whew, okay. So my planner was in my office, and I'm currently in my art studio, so a bit of a trek. All right, so this is my current planner. And then again, custom cover, and I added some stickle/pops of color to the headlights there, and to the pen here on my name page. But as we get into the dashboards, one of the things I want to show you. So, for example, in January, this foiling here, I use this toner pen for that. And then when I flip it, you're gonna really see why I use the toner pen. Look at that precision, okay? And I'm gonna get really close so you can really appreciate just the sheer beauty of this. And I decided to laminate this because I wanted to make this permanent, because this was a lot of work, because I did 12 of these and another full set of 12, okay? But this is very difficult to get with a glue stick. Now look at the difference. Glue stick, toner pen, okay? Now both give you similar effects, but if you notice, I chose different methods for a reason. So this wasn't just, random. I did this very intentionally, and that's why I want to kind of break this down, because when you learn to foil, it's important to consider the design that you have, and it's important to consider why you're using a certain technique. Different techniques do different things, okay? And I've used my laser printer for really complicated designs, especially when I want to layer. But for something like this, quite frankly, it's easier just to use a toner pen. It's more time consuming, but look at how skinny some of these lines are. A glue stick could not have done this. Now, could I have done this on using my laser printer? Yes, but I would have had to have gone into my design program and manually create these abstract patterns, which I can do, right? I have the skill to do it, but the average person doesn't. And quite frankly, it would have taken me longer to do that than just to use a toner pen, which is why I chose to use this method. Okay, so that's why I say consider your design, and just because you know how to do something doesn't mean you should use that technique. So it's always important to consider what technique you're using and why you're using it. So the toner pen gives you great precision, similar to a laser printer, but in my opinion, faster, because again, if you don't have design skills or you don't own expensive software, like Photoshop, InDesign, etc., like I do, this allows you basically to do the same thing without having to own that kind of expensive software, okay? Now, let's look at this one. This one has a similar effect, but the pattern that I created for the marble for this had different strokes. The strokes were broader, bigger, bolder, right? So to me, it made more sense to use my glue stick because it gives me the freedom to kind of create that more organic design. So as you can see, I wasn't too concerned about accuracy because I knew my glue stick was basically going to do the heavy lifting for me. And this was faster than this because here, as you can see, it requires a great deal of detail work because look at everything that I did. All of the little tiny specks, nooks and crannies. Now, I do think it's important to note that it's important to leave some negative space, okay? It's important to leave something here so that you're not just swabbing gold all everywhere. Now, I love glitter, I love gold, I love foil. Hence this, right? But I think, again, it's important to be intentional about your design. Think about your design, because if you're just gonna swipe gold everywhere, then you can just print an entire sheet of black toner on your laser printer and foil the whole sheet, right? But if you want something more elegant, more intentional, then this is where the toner pen comes in. If you want something a little bit more freeform, more organic, or the design is bolder and bigger, then that's where the glue stick will make more sense, okay? So I'm gonna hold these both up so you can really, again, see the distinction between the two. Again, similar effects, but even though they look similar, completely different design. Design in terms of not just composition and color and in terms of the marbling of the pattern that I created, but also in terms of the technique that I applied. So those are the things that you have to be mindful of when you're considering which method you should use. Okay, so that's a visual of two different methods that I use and two different outputs and the reason why I chose to use each of these. Okay, now let's get into something a little bit more practical. Okay, let's look at my business planner that I created, and I'll set these aside. All right, so this is my business planner that I just created, just yesterday, actually. And so let's take a look. Okay, here we have some foiling. It's very minimal, but it's impactful. And I'll get closer so you can really appreciate the beauty of this. Now, this is when you really need to ask yourself, when do I want to foil and why do I want to foil? Okay? Look at that. Now, this level of precision, which method do you think I used? Comment below if you think I used the glue stick, or if you think I used the toner pen, or if you think I used something entirely different. I'll give you a couple of seconds just to ponder. All right, have you guessed it? I use my laser printer for this. Remember what I said earlier about the laser printer being really good at things like typography and things like geometric shapes? That's why I chose this. Now, I didn't just use my laser printer for this. If you notice, I also have color here, and I do not have a color laser printer. Now, if you do, then you can really do some magnificent things simultaneously without a bunch of fuss. Okay, if you have a color laser printer, kudos to you, because you can do some really cool things. Problems come in when you use different printers and different techniques and combine them to make a more complicated design. Now, if you just take a look at this, it doesn't look very complicated. But I'm going to break down my design for you, okay? Take a look at everything. And again, I'm going to get really close. I have text as a background. That's my backdrop. There's script text. Do you see that? Then I also added this text on top of that text. So I grayed out the text in the background, and I kept the text here black. Then I added a book. Okay? Then I added a ribbon. I added that manually, okay, because I designed this pattern. Then I added more text. But this isn't gold. Now, I could have done it gold, but there's a reason why I didn't. Because again, you got to think about design when you're using foil. Foil is very impactful. And have you ever seen something that you're like, oh, I love the gold foil, but you're like, ooh, it's too much, right? Is there such a thing as too much foil? Yes, there is. And like I said, I'm a foil girly. So when I say that, I'm not saying it lightly. You can use too much foil. And a lot of times when there's too much foil, it's because whoever did it didn't think about design. They didn't think about what they were doing in terms of their composition. They just were like, more foil, better, right? And that's not true. Sometimes more foil can be distracting. Sometimes it takes away from the impact of this. And in fact, I'm going to prove to you that in just a second. And I was like, you know, more gold equals better too. But even I, as an experienced person who foils and has foiled frequently over the last few years, makes this mistake. I've been foiling for maybe, let's see, since 2019, I think, is when I started foiling. So it's been about 6.5 years since I've started foiling in this way. So I'm not talking about like embossing and using your embossing powders, that kind of thing, but using foil in this method. I've been foiling for that long. And there is a method to the madness. I know sometimes it can seem like it's just random, but it's not. And that's why I decided to do this foiling masterclass, because a lot of people will foil something, but they're not thinking about design. They're not thinking about composition. They're not thinking about all of the different layers of their design that make up that composition and why they want to use foil. I wanted to use foil because I wanted something to stand out. And I chose to only do the top text because I wanted that to stand out more than the rest of this text, but also I wanted this to be legible. I could have foiled this, but I decided that it was going to be too distracting and take away from this. And by the way, this is my word of the year. So it kind of makes sense that I want this to have a greater impact than the rest of this text. Okay. Now, what else could I have foiled here? As I mentioned, I could have foiled this text here, but again, I think that would have been overkill. Like it would have looked beautiful, but then this would have gotten lost. Okay, so that's the design aspect that I'm talking about. I could have also foiled the text behind here, and I almost started to do that. I could have foiled this, and instead of making it grayscale, made it black. But then I thought I'll be focusing more on this script text versus my word of the year. Again, impact, okay? I could have also foiled the crown. And that's far away enough from this to still have this have impact. So that is still an option, but I'm going to tell you why I chose not to do that, okay? And I'll show you the reason why. All right, so this is, again, it seems like a simple design, but it's actually really complicated because of the multiple layers that I have and the multiple things that I could have foiled, that I had the option to foil, and I used restraint. And I used restraint because I wanted my word of the year, again, to have impact. So that's why I'm creating this video, so you can understand design, understand composition, and understand the reasons why I fold in a certain way, okay? Now, some people will just slap fold everywhere, and that's fine if you don't care about design or composition or the end result, but I want you to do things intentionally. And that's why my word of the year is rain, because I want to do everything with intentionality this year, and not just do things just to do things, but to make sure that I'm doing it for the right reasons and doing it, again, with the intentionality so that I can reach my goals as opposed to reaching things that I never intended to accomplish. Okay, so that's my word of the year for my business planner and what that looks like. But now I'm going to show you the progression. This is the end result. I'm going to show you how I got here. Okay, all right, let's slide this over and bring all of this in. Okay, now, this paper for my business planner is 30-pound paper. So I fold on 30-pound paper, okay? I originally was going to fold on vellum. And I will have to say, out of all the years that I've been folding, for some reason it never occurred to me to fold in vellum. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to fold in vellum. It's going to look amazing. And I think that's going to be so cool. Okay, so this was my first attempt. Not bad, right? That looks good. It's legible. But what do you notice about the design? And let me get a sheet of white paper to even make it easier for you to see. Take a look at the design. What's noticeable, what isn't noticeable? And as soon as I printed this and folded, I was like, I fell into a rookie mistake. Now the background text is great, right? You can see it, but it's not distracting. My word of the year stands out. It's bold. It's beautiful. Love that. The book is legible. I can still read the text here, right? Because I knew up front that folding this, even though I thought it would be really cool and pretty, would be too much. So I used restraint. But I also said, this is far away enough from the word rain. Let's fold the crown. And I was doing it real quick. Wasn't really thinking about basics of design, even though I've been in graphic design for lots of years. Hey, even the experts forget things, right? Especially when you're rushing. And I was rushing, trying to get this done, doing some other things, and multitasking, and I folded the crown. Now look at the crown. Is it ugly? No. But let's compare it to the end result crown. In fact, let's do this. I folded, and I immediately was like, Tasha, you forgot a basic of design, okay? And I was like, the crown gets lost, right? The crown gets completely lost. And it's not lost because it's a crown. It's lost because of the type of crown that I chose. Now, I chose to print this page with my inkjet because, again, I have a monochrome laser printer, but I also have a craft inkjet printer. So my craft printer can print 12 by 12. Scrapbook paper, right? As well as other things as well, like standard size, letter A14, legal size, etc. So I ended up just choosing the regular inkjet crown because when I did this, I immediately was like, why did I do that? Now, what could I have done differently? And I will show you some other options if you're like, you know what, I really want to fold crown. And I could have folded a crown, but I could not successfully with this design. Okay, so let me show you some other options here and show you some other iterations rather. So that was the first one I did on vellum. And then after this, I was like, I need to print it on 30-pound paper. Okay, so then I printed it, same thing, on 30-pound paper because I was determined to have a gold crown. Okay, we still have, you can see the text a little bit more, but it's still not distracting, but it doesn't get as lost as this, right? This is the vellum. Okay. The book definitely stands out more, and I felt like the book got a little bit lost here. I mean, I can see that it's a book, but I felt like it was a little bit too light, which I wasn't a fan of. But let's look at the crown. Is it any better? Nope. So the paper had nothing to do with it, right? It's the object itself and the technique. So that's why I want to show both of these because I still was like, I want to keep the crown. I want the crown to be gold. So I used 30-pound paper, but guess what? The design is still flawed. Okay. All right. I learned my lesson. I decided we're going to just inkjet this. And then I decide to just only do foiling on my word of the year. Okay. So this is my third attempt. So attempt number 1 with the vellum, attempt number 2 with 30-pound paper. Okay. Inkjet, beautiful, right? Beautiful design, beautiful print. My laser printer, which sometimes this will happen if you have a laser printer. I don't know if any of you have a laser printer, but especially monochrome laser printer. Sometimes the rollers can easily misalign and get mad at you for no good reason. Okay? Because the sky is blue. It doesn't care, right? It just happens, right? It just for whatever reason, it just happens. Same thing with your regular inkjet. Like sometimes the rollers can misalign. Have you ever put anything in and all of a sudden it comes out all skewed and you're like, what? What just happened? I just put it in the tray. Well, I mean, it just happens sometimes, right? Now, we'll say it happens more often, in my opinion, with laser printers. And have you picked up on it? The toner, even though I have it here, it printed up here pretty well, but it also got here. Okay? So it deposited too much toner. And when that happens, sometimes you'll see almost like another mirrored image of your design somewhere else, even though I didn't have the word rain here, but the printer did that for me. Okay? So you see that little ghosting here of the word rain? And I'm getting real close so you can see it. You see that? So that was tip number 3, and I was so angry, and I was like, ugh, okay. And before I got to this, actually, I lied. This is not attempt number 3, okay? This is my attempt to try to make it work on vellum. You see all of this? Look at this. Vellum in particular, and in fact, these were attempt 1 vellum, attempt 2, 3, 4, and after the 4th attempt with vellum, I said, not using vellum. Then I switched 30-pound paper. So this is really, my 30-pound paper is really attempt number 5, okay? And I did that out of order on purpose so you can see. Look at this. Do you see how, in fact, let me do this one. Too much toner, right? Too much toner. Look at all that toner at the top. Crown misaligned. Okay. This one's not too bad. It printed the word rain pretty spot on. The crown is a little bit more aligned, but this time I did something different, and I'll explain that to you in a second. But again, toner issues, too much toner, and kind of splatters here. Now, this is pretty minor, so I could have worked with this. And this one, again, was almost spot on, but I was trying to get it a little bit better. But then I finally realized, okay, the problem is the material. As much as I love vellum, and I love the semi-translucency of it, when you're working with a material that is super smooth and slick, a lot of times your rollers in your printer do not like it. Okay, even in my inkjet, sometimes this will occasionally misalign, or it'll say something like insert paper, and there's paper in there and it's vellum, because this vellum is so thin. Now, if you have a printer that has a vellum setting, good for you, but most printers, even most modern printers, don't have a vellum setting. Now, if you do, that's great, because then it'll tell the printer, hey, I'm changing the type of paper. You know, and now I have a pretty high-end printer, like, for example, my craft printer, and it doesn't have a vellum setting. So not all printers will, even if it's a mid-range or high-end printer. So just because you have an expensive printer doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a vellum setting, okay? It also depends on the brand and whether or not they want to make a special setting for that type of paper. Now, I've got settings for things like 𝐓𝐶𝐞𝐫 paper, okay? But I don't have a vellum setting, okay? So, I mean, brands, you know, there's no rhyme or reason for things, you know what I mean? So this is so slick and smooth. And I didn't notice it in my inkjet printer when I was, you know, depositing the color initially on the vellum. But when a moment I inserted this into my laser printer, then that's when I realized it's too slick. It's too smooth. I literally saw it in my tray, because I have 2 different trays, and I put it in my manual insert tray. When I'm doing foiling, usually I like to manually insert it so that I can control, and I could see the pages going like this inside. And I was like, what is it doing? It was like wiggling itself inside, because it just couldn't, it's like it had a hard time getting a grip, okay? And the reason why is because vellum is so slick and smooth, and it's so thin on top of it. So you're dealing with something that's slick, smooth, and thin. It's not quite as bad as trying to do something on like tracing paper, for example, or like tissue paper. But it just, the slickness of it makes it difficult for the rollers to grab. Okay, now it's not impossible to do it because as I showed you, I did it, right? I had a successful attempt, and even after my successful attempt, I realized I don't like it. That's when I realized, okay, I love vellum, but not for this particular project. So choosing the right technique is just as important as choosing the right design, which is just as important as choosing the right printer, which is just as important as choosing the right material. Okay? So that's why I'm going over all of this, because I don't know anyone else that goes over everything in this detail. And I've just kind of figured all of this out on my own, just from 6-7 years of me doing this on my own and wanting to learn it and teaching myself how to do this. Okay? So all of these things matter. And they matter for all the reasons that I've already discussed. Okay? So now let's delve a little bit deeper. Okay? Let's delve into design a little bit. So again, as you can see, this is all these attempts of me. Even when I moved over to 30-pound paper, me attempting to still not give up the crown because I was being stubborn. And I didn't want to accept the fact that I didn't want to change the crown. I didn't want to change the crown. All these attempts and wasted paper because I was being stubborn over the design of my crown. Okay? But I'm going to show you why the design of my crown matters. All right, so now let's switch gears a little bit. Let's move over to my, let's see, how can I do this? I think my laptop's going to be too big. Let me get my iPad. I think it'll be easier to show you on my iPad because I have a iPad mini. I think that'll make it a little bit easier to see because I think this will be a little bit too difficult to see on my laptop. All right, so let me do that and then I'll be right back. All right, you guys, so I have my iPad mini. And I don't have my stylus because when my brother Scan and Cut was in the repair shop, I accidentally left it in the drawer where you keep all of your tools, along with some other things. And brother decided to send me a new machine, and I totally forgot about all the stuff I had in that drawer. So all of that is gone, and I got to get a new one. So we're going to make do without one. All right, so I'm going to use my iPad to show you the importance of design. All right, so let's go into Canva. And I'm going to pull up the design that I created. Well, basically, I transferred it into Canva to make it easier for you guys to see. Okay. And let's see. Maybe let me zoom in to make this even easier. Let me get as close as I can. There we go. I know there's a bit of a glare because of the screen being so glossy, so I'll try to hold it at an angle. All right, there we go. All right, so this is my design that I came up with, and you can see the different aspects of it, right? The text in the background, grayed out, the black text that I added on top of that, the book, and the additional text, the ribbon that I created, and the crown. Now, when you want to foil, the reason you have to think about design is because you have to do things in a certain order, okay? So in order to create this design, or rather in order to foil this design successfully, I should say, you have to do things in certain order and in certain parts. And this is what I mean. Okay, this is my entire design, right? But I can't just print it like this, or at least I shouldn't, okay? So let's go to page number 2. I chose to eventually only foil my word of the year. So the first thing I need to do is delete this. Okay. And then print this part on my inkjet. So I delete my word of the year and send this to my inkjet printer and print it. Okay. And then step 2 is me creating a new page with only my word of the year on it, because after I have my inkjet design, right? After I have this, I then want to only include the part that I want to foil, right? Which is my word of the year. So then I print this, and now I'm changing printers. Remember, this part minus my word of the year goes to my inkjet printer. I send this to my inkjet printer. Then I create a new page with only my word of the year on it, because now I want to foil. And now I'm taking my inkjet, I'm taking this, minus the word of the year, and I'm putting that page into my laser printer tray, And I'm opening up this page and saying print page 2 so that it only prints the reign of my word of the year on that page that already has my inkjet image. Okay, we're working in layers, right? Because I want color and I don't have a color laser printer. That's why I'm doing it this way. And I think this is the way most people are going to probably have to do it too, because most people probably don't have a color laser printer. I mean, you might, but I think the average person more than likely has an inkjet. Okay, so this is step 1. Print your design minus whatever you want to foil. So in my case, it was the texture, but it could have been the text and the crown, right? But so you print your design if you want color and you only have inkjet, and you're going to print that first. Then you're going to print whatever you want to be foiled, which in my case is text, but it could also be an image. You're going to print that using your laser printer if you're using the laser printer technique. Okay. Then you take what your laser printer prints out for you, and you're going to insert that page into your laminator with foil and foil it. Now you could use a carrier sheet. I like to just use printer paper because in my opinion, printer paper works better, quite frankly. It's less expensive and quite frankly, it's less cumbersome. And I've purchased high-end carrier sheets and I don't really care for them myself. So quite frankly, I think it's better in terms of the end result and on your pocketbook just to use printer paper. So use printer paper, sandwich it in between your printed page with the word that you want to foil with your foil on top, and then you're going to send that through your laminator, okay? Then you're going to get your foiled image. Now, let's say, again, I'm determined to have my word of the year and the crown foiled, which is what I did, right? I did this like 6 times. This didn't work. And it didn't work because, well, it didn't work well. Let me say that, because it did foil successfully, but it didn't work well, in my opinion, because of the design of the crown. And let's look at the crown. I took that colored image. If you notice here, I made it black. But look at it. Remember, when you foil, the reason it works with laser printer is because you have that black toner. And then you put your foil on top, and that creates the foiled image. So in order to get this to foil, I had to turn that color image from here. As you can see, it's the same image, right? I had to take that and make it black and white. Okay? So I did that in Canva. So if you have Canva, and you can do this in the free version. If you have the free version of Canva, you can do that. So I made it black and white by controlling the brightness and the contrast and playing with that. Okay? It still didn't work, right? So then let's say you're like, I really want that crown to print. So what do you do? All right, I'm going to show you. And I made a duplicate of this so that you could see what I mean. So I'm going to take this crown and actually I'm going to explain to you what I'm going to do first. Okay. So this image didn't print. It didn't foil properly because of the design of the crown. It's too intricate. And because I have the jewels in there, it just makes it difficult to be able to foil. As you can see, when it did foil, it folded successfully, but it basically covered everything because so much of this image, even though I made it black and white, is black. So you don't have enough of a contrast between the black elements and the white elements. That's why it folded kind of all over the place, right? So how are we going to fix that? The best way to fix it, do you remember what I said laser printer is good for in terms of foiling? In terms of its accuracy? Like it has greater precision, but it works well with geometric shapes, right? Things that, like this is basically too intricate of a design, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this. And let's find a new crown image that I know for a fact will work. And so, for example, if you wanted to do your word of the year plus an image that represented that word of the year, this is how you would do it, okay? So I'm going to go to Elements. And I'm going to search for crown silhouette. Now, I'm going to use free design since I have a paid design, but since most of you may not, I'm going to go to graphics and then go over to price. And then I'm going to choose free so that whatever I choose will be free. Okay. So now all of these are free. Now let's look at all of the options. Do you see anything that might work? Potentially. Right? So these are all the options here. And I can definitely see something that will work. And I'm going to tell you which one I think will work best and why. All right, so these are the designs that we have here. And I'll just kind of scroll through so you can see all of the options, right? And there's several options. And there's a few here that I think will work and that will work well. And I'll explain to you why. All right, you see all of those options? Okay, let's scroll back up to the top. Now, I'm going to pick, let's see. I'm going to pick this one. And I'm going to rotate it kind of like I had the other one and put it down here. So it's similar, right? So it's similar to that. Okay. Why do you think I chose this one? Number one, because it's black, right? I don't have to finagle with the color settings. I don't have to do anything with the brightness, with the color contrasting. I don't have to manually manipulate it in any way. That takes away half of the work right there. But look at the design of the crown compared to this one. This is super intricate and ornate, which is one of the reasons why I love it and why it prints so well with my inkjet. But intricacy with an inkjet is the enemy for a laser printer when you want to foil something. So this works because of the simplicity of the design. Remember I said folding with a laser printer does really well in terms of precision, but also with like more simplistic shapes, like geometric shapes. And look at this, it's basically circle and connecting shapes versus this, which has all of that interconnecting design. So this is simpler. If I wanted to create a crown and have it fold and fold in a way that isn't distracting, this is the way to do it. Okay. Now, could I have chosen something else? Yes. Like if you could have chosen something like that, right? That would work too in the simple design. And you're going to get full wherever you see black. That's where you're going to get full. Okay. You could also do something a little bit more graphic, right? So let's say I was like, you know what? I wanted to be impactful. And I also wanted to have more of a graphic element to it. I could have did something like that. And that looks really cool, right? So what effect are you going for? What kind of design are you going for, right? Which other ones of these would work? Remember, the bolder the line, the more it's going to foil. All right, so this will work, but it's going to be a little bit dainty in terms of foiling. Would that work? It would. And if I wanted something similar to what I chose, but with less intricacy, this would have been the way to go versus that. But at the end of the day, I decided, you know what? I want to see some gems. I want to see some jewels. I want some color because the entire background is gray. The book is black. The text on top of the book is black. And I want more color other than the ribbon. So that's why I decided just leave it alone and use my inkjet. Okay. But if you were like, you know what? I don't care about that. I want the word of the year and the crown to be gold. This is a way to get a similar design in a way that would produce a better result. Okay. All right, so that's talking about design and the different elements that you need to consider and why things fall a certain way or fall better depending on the design that you choose or depending on the image that you incorporate into your design. All right, now let's go back to paper. All right, now let's take a look at some of the other images that I foiled. So this I foiled with my foil pen, okay? And again, you can see probably the reason why I chose that is because of the intricacy of the veining and the flowers is similar to marble. And so I knew I wanted something that was going to be precise. And this was an easy way for me to get that precision without me having to, import an image into graphic design program and add different lines and then send it to my laser printer or versus me doing all of that manually, right? So again, it gives you that similar effect. And I still have that same level of accuracy, but in my opinion, it's faster, right? This took away an additional layer of design that I would have had to have added if I chose to do this with my laser printer. Now, again, I'm not saying it's not impossible to do it with your laser printer. You can, and I've done it. But when they invented this, I was like, you know what? Let's use this, right? It's faster. And it allows people who don't have a, interest in graphic design to be able to get a similar effect, okay? So that's why I chose to foil this with the toner pen versus something like a glue stick. All right, so another image of that. Now, here's some other images that I created. Let's say we want to add some foil to something. Okay, so let's start with this. Let's do real time foiling here. And I'm not going to show you the laminator method because there's probably hundreds of videos on YouTube of people using the laminator method. So that's why I'm kind of skipping over that. Explain the process. I think most of you probably understand that part of it, but probably the nuance with all of these other techniques is probably something that most people don't understand. So that's why I'm kind of focusing more on that. If you want me to go more in detail with a laminator, let me know. But I think there's so many other videos that talk about that. I didn't feel the need to do that. And this video is probably going to be long enough without me doing that. So, so I'm trying to do my best to kind of keep this as short as possible and impactful. Okay. So let's try using the glue stick. Let's say I want a big swash of color over this versus the intricate veining that I added to these flowers. Okay. So that was with this. Now let's use glue stick. And again, this is just 𝐓𝐿's purple glue. Love this stuff. So many different uses. Okay. Now I'm going to push it down like I rolled it in reverse, like it was like this. So I'm going to put it in reverse so that I don't have an excessive amount of glue. I want it to be basically flat on the top without it being overly going over the top. Okay. Now, the key with this is you're going to make big swipes, but you can also use the edge of the glue stick to your advantage, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so I'm just going to keep it flat and just make swipes. So I'm making kind of movements with my glue stick. I'm going across the petals with movements, okay? Now I'm going to do it again, and then I'm going to use the edge of my glue stick. Okay, now let's foil both of them. And I'm using some leftover foil, and I always keep this because this will still foil. Okay, do not throw this away. Like, foiling sheets are too expensive. You can still use them. I use these multiple times before I actually get rid of it. Okay, in fact, I'll prove it to you. Look, I used this until it almost turned clear. And guess what? I can still use this. Okay, for like smaller projects or things that I just want to have a light foiling effect on. So even when it's like this, you can still get 1 or 2 more uses out of it. But don't throw it away until it at least gets to this point. Okay, so save your pocketbook. All right, now I'm going to put this on top, and I'm using my hands, and I'm just going to rub it around. Okay, now because this has been used before, I'm going to do that and then come back and do it again. Because again, I want to make sure that it covers. So you're going to do this multiple times. Now, if you're using just a clean sheet of foil, you don't have to do that. But again, I'm using my fingers and just rubbing. And I like using used pieces of foil because it gives you a more organic feel and look, which I personally prefer. Now, if you want this to be bolder and more impactful, you're going to use a new sheet of foil, okay? So I'm just moving the foil around. The areas where I applied the glue stick. All right, let's take a look. You see that extra little swash of color? Now, look at the difference with me using the edge. So if you use the edge of your glue stick, you get really sharp lines, which I'm personally not a fan of. But I wanted to show you both ways so you can see when you might want to use that. It kind of gives you a similar effect to this if that's what you're going for. Okay, so now I'm going to take this, shake it, and I'm going to add some veining to this. Okay, so I'm just going to use the tip of this. And I'm going in the middle of the flower to add veining. Again, apply the foil on top and rub. Okay, now look at the veining that I just added. And this is holographic bronze foil. You see how I added that veining here? Where it wasn't before? This gives you a level of precision that this just will not give you. Okay, so this is good for, I think, soft swashes of color. This is great for more detail work and precision. Okay, which also explains the reason why. I'm gonna bring it back in. I use this for this. And the reason why I use the toner pen and this for this. Okay? That's why I showed you this at the beginning, so visually you could get a better understanding of why I changed my technique, even though these are similar designs based on the composition, okay? This one, it makes more sense now, right? Big swashes of color. I didn't need detail work because this is bigger design. I had more room to work with. Here, I used the toner pen because I literally have veining in the marble. In order to get this level of detail, I needed to use this. Now, could I have used this here? Yes, but it would not have looked like this. Now, if you want to maintain this level of veining in your marble or whatever your design is, you need to use something that gives you the accuracy to be able to do that. So, which method is better? Which method do you prefer? I love both of them. And I like them both for different reasons because they do different things, right? So I love this one when I want more organic designs. I want softer lines. I have a bigger design. I want it to be a little bit bolder, brighter, right? I like this when I want detail. Like, look at the elegance of this. Like, this just gives you a level of detail that this never can. And that's just a fact. That doesn't make this better than this. It just makes it different, okay? So this is why technique matters, all right? And I've already proven to you why design matters, okay? So choose the right method for the end result that you're going for that matches the design that you want to foil, okay? All right, let's put this back. All right, now I have a new product that I want to try, and I want to see if I can get the same level of precision as this gives me, and I don't know. All right, but let's figure it out together. So I'm going to bring this sheet back in. It's our practice sheet, okay? And these are those fine tip glue pens that I showed you in a haul last year. I bought these because I hoped and I suspected that I might be able to get this level of precision with this. But let's see. We won't know until we test it. These are ball pen glue pens. Okay. So brand new out of the package. I haven't used it yet. It's glue, but it looks like a pen. So you click it and you have that little ball tip on the end. So I'm just going to try to pop this off. Well, let me get my craft knife. Scrape it off. It's like a little silicone tip like you have on your pens. Okay, so glue. Now let's see. Maybe I should get like a Post-it or something. Get my Post-it note drawer. And, okay, we got it clicked. Let's see. Oh, it starts immediately. Oh, that is cool. Okay, now, in fact, let me zoom in. I'm going to zoom all the way in, okay? Look at the flower first before I do anything so you can see the difference. In fact, I'll do this one. This is the one I'm going to add glue to. And I'm going to add glue to all those little stamens, the tops of all the stamens, the little dots. I'm going to do that with this pen. All right, are you ready? Let me pull this down so you can see it. All right, let's go. right. Let's see, how do I disengage it? Okay, there we go. That was too easy. All right, now let's put the foiling on top. I'm gonna use this large rectangle. And again, same technique, just rub. Now I want to test if this one needs drying time, unlike the other ones that don't need much. This one might need drying time. Okay. It's not working. All right, let's try it again. This time I'm gonna let it dry. Okay. Let's do this one. All right, now we're gonna let it dry. Let's let it dry for 60 seconds. All right, let's do a countdown. All right, 60 seconds. We're gonna stop the clock. Now, let's put this on top. Hopefully it's dry enough. Rub, 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 dub. Okay, it's starting to work, so it might need more dry time. So maybe 20 seconds dry time. Let me get my bone folder. Maybe it needs more pressure. Aha! Okay, so more pressure helps. So I think if it has more dry time, this might work. I mean, not as spectacular as this, right? And it doesn't have the accuracy of that. But there's a little bit. Let's see. Can I get... I'm turning it really slowly so you can see the little dots that I made. Almost. Okay. Almost. Okay. Let's try it again and do 120 seconds. Let's do 2 minutes. Okay. Because I really think this might work. So let's see. Let's go back to maybe this one. That didn't work the first time. All right, let's go. Aha. Okay. I just proved to you in real time that time and pressure make a difference. Okay. Now look at that. That's interesting. Okay, now let's compare it. Okay, let's do this one with the toner pen. Okay, so to make it fair, I used this, but I noticed, which I don't normally do this caused this to kind of blob out a little bit more, which is kind of similar to this. So this has more wait time, but this is more affordable. So if you are looking for an option that gives you bang for your buck, and you don't mind waiting 2 minutes in between foiling, you could use this, right? In fact, this might allow you to foil a larger area, because the downside to this using the toner pen is you do have to work quickly. You cannot foil large areas at a time without wasting product. So that's something to be mindful of, some things to consider when you want to foil. All right, let's clean up and then we're gonna recap. All right, so this first example is me foiling with my laser printer. And again, as I mentioned earlier, this is best for things like typography, repeating patterns, borders, geometric elements. I think one of its greatest strengths is the ability to get precision. It's also more scalable than any of these other manual methods, right? You can, use your laser printer to print multiple designs on different sheets of paper, etc. And for the most part, I think it gives you greater consistency, but it does have limitations. You can't get any sort of organic line variation, and you're also heavily dependent on your printer. And when you're switching printers, for example, from inkjet to the laser for more complicated or layered designs, that's when that printer dependency becomes a huge issue. Issues like your rollers, for example, when you're working with a smooth material like vellum. Even when you're not working with vellum, you might still have certain issues with your rollers, with it grabbing the paper. For example, even though this is 30-pound paper and I'm using a decent printer, laser printer, it still had issues with depositing too much toner, right? So I would say the issues can be like things like spotty transfer, getting too much density in your toner, over transferring. And I would say things like with lamination, you can get things like heat imbalances, again, overfoiling, that kind of thing. So I think you can get similar results if you use something like a Mink machine versus a laminator, but you are still going to have similar issues, because I've seen even people that have a Mink machine have similar issues to when I use a laminator and a laser printer. Okay, so now let's talk about the second method, using a toner stick, right? A toner pen, I think, gives you more controlled detail and is great for doing things by hand, detail work by hand. So for example, the example I gave you with the veining in this marble, look at that level of detail. You just can't get that with a glue stick. Now you can get this with a laser printer if you have design skills and design software. Again, this is a great alternative when you want to do something by hand and or you don't have design skills or expensive design software. Okay, so I think it's great for things like, like I said, detail work. You could also do something like write your name by hand, right? So you could do script, calligraphy, different types of textual embellishments. Like if I wanted to use the toner pen to write out the word rain, I could have done that and then immediately foiled it without even having to fool with my laser printer, right? So this is really great for ultra fine lines, again, detail work, and it kind of bridges digital and handmade design, which is something that I really love. So that's what this toner pen is really great at. Now let's talk about the glue stick. So the glue stick, I think, is really great, again, for large shapes, bold designs, abstract areas that you want to fill in. It gives you kind of that painterly effect. So if you want, softer lines, like look at the softness of the lines here versus the rigidity of the veining here, right? So even though this is bolder and has broader strokes, it's softer compared to this where it's more hardly foiled and has more rigid lines, okay? So this gives you kind of that softer yet bolder painterly effect versus the toner pen that I think is better for things like precision work. And I've shown you the demonstration of the glue stick along with the toner pen. And this is kind of like the traditional method of doing it with laser printer and then sending it through your laminator, okay? All right, now, is there a time when you might want to combine designs? Yes, there is. For example, if I use my laser printer, and for example, if I didn't want to have this shadowed effect, and I was like, you know what, I want all of that to be filled in, I could come in with this toner pen, apply it to the text here, and instead of having a shadow, I create a bolder letters, right? So you can use it to fix mistakes. You can use it to fix areas that didn't foil that you want it full. For example, if I only want it full in this tiny little area here, I could use this for the book cover and create a full detail right here. Okay, so this is great for fixing mistakes and for field work, right? I could also, if I wanted, let's say I wanted maybe an abstract design here, I could do the similar thing. I could take this glue stick and add bold swashes of color wherever I wanted it and create abstract little blobs on top of this. Or if I wanted to create the illusion of like an ink spill, like I could have, instead of a crown, like a little ink well, and then create an ink spill by using my glue stick. So those are things that you can do. You can use your laser printer to get the precision of the typography that you want, and then come in with your glue stick to add, bold swashes of color, organic lines, etc. Or if you wanted more detail work or to fix a mistake, you could use your toner pen as well and use that on top of the letters here. So you could technically use all three if you wanted to do different things, or if you wanted to fix a mistake or add different bold swashes of color on top of this, and combine all three techniques. So it's important to understand why you use each technique, what each technique does, and when you might want to combine and layer different techniques to create a different effect. Okay, so I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you found this helpful. If you watched the video all the way through to the end, write in the word toner and let me know whether or not you enjoyed this video. This was a bonus video this month. Again, shout out to Vicky Foster 7725 for requesting this video. She's the reason why all of you are getting this video. And I told her I would do my best to try to add this in as a bonus video in February or March. So again, I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed this foiling masterclass. All right, now are there other areas that I could have covered? Yes. I mean, it would be impossible to cover absolutely everything, but I tried to hit the different highlights of things that I think might be useful to create your own stickers, your own dashboards, right? This is sticker paper. This is 30-pound paper. This is laminated paper, right? To create a dashboard. This is vellum. So there's different things that you can use to create certain types of effects. So choose wisely. All right, you guys, that's going to be it for me today. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for watching.